Welcome back, everybody, to a brand new episode of Over the Top Talk. I'm your host, Owen, and today I'm joined by Max, who a lot of you guys have seen. He's been on my channel. You might see him in my comments. He's always around. We love having him on this podcast, especially when it comes to these UFC predictions. But obviously, UFC 323, by the time we're making this video, is a couple days out. It brings us to a pretty good card over in Vegas. We love the Vegas cards. And it's also the last event that people have to pay for. And so it goes to Paramount in the end of January. So, Max, I just want to start. How have you been doing, man? I know you've been taking some trips. You hung out with some of the people we'll talk about on this card. But overall, how are you doing, and how do you feel about this card we got Saturday?
I've been doing great, brother, and I hope you and your family had a great Thanksgiving last week. It's been going good, man. I know I sound a little bad right now. In Kentucky, you get a little bit of everything. In the weather, you get 100 degrees in the summertime, and then you get snow in the winter. We're hitting that wall right now in Kentucky, so it just got really cold really quick. So I'm a little stopped up. I went to the North Carolina Kentucky game last night. That unfortunately didn't go in the Wildcats' favor. Didn't get home until 3 a.m. Had to wake up early this morning for work. So I'm a little drained right now. Voice is kind of cooked, but the energy's high, man. But things have been going great. I've been doing the Hawk Talk tour. That's something I've been wanting to do really ever since I got into this. Some of these guys, that me and Owen talk to, they really are just normal human beings. And they're really good people at the end of the day. And I think that's kind of why we do our podcast to show, what these guys are like outside the octagon. And I had the privilege and opportunity to go visit my best friend inside the UFC, Terrence McKinney. We'll be talking about him in a few fights from now as we get down this prediction video. But it was super neat to be able to be in somebody's fight camp, not just in general, but to be so close to the event. Just got back home 3 weeks ago from Orlando. So it was a blessing to be down there, and I can't wait to watch him compete on Saturday night.
Perfect. And, just before we start these predictions, guys, make sure to subscribe to me and Anthony's channel. Subscribe down below. We do UFC content, WWE content. Obviously, Anthony does the WWE. I join him for that. I am in control of the UFC part of our content. Also on Instagram, Over the Top Talk, we post pretty much daily rails posts. You'll always see us on there doing stories, stuff like that. UFC related, WWE related. We've been doing some NFL because the Patriots are on a roll right now. And other than that, Over the Top Talk, X, Instagram. And like I said, make sure to subscribe. We're on the road to 200 subs now. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn the reins over to Max here when we discuss this first fight, because we have Bruno Ferreira versus Marvin Vettori. And I know Max has been waiting to talk about his guy Bruno, so I'll let you take the floor first.
I appreciate that, Owen. I didn't say Bruno in the intro. I didn't get to be in his fight camp. Obviously, he does his fight camp in Brazil. But really neat thing before I start off talking about what I think is going to happen in the fight. I was able to actually get my buddy Dom Tomasello, who does videography and photography work for a lot of UFC fighters. He was with Carlos Prates for UFC 322. Dom is actually Bruno's videographer and photographer this week for his fight camp at UFC Vegas 323. So I'm really, really happy that I got to take, Bruno, who's my friend from the podcast, Dom, who I met through Full Violence, and met him through Amir Albazi. So really cool to put those two guys together. Bruno's been putting out some awesome content this week, and Dom's the guy behind that. So really, really cool whenever I get to see, my buddies become friends too. Really, really cool stuff there. But I'm obviously very biased, guys, but if you've watched any other prediction videos this week, there's the tale of two tapes. There's people that are saying Vettori is just going to continue to walk forward. He's going to continue to take damage. He's going to continue to have this granite chin, and it's just going to be a normal Marvin Vettori fight. I'm obviously maybe a little biased because Bruno's my friend, and he's a really good dude to me. I think Bruno's going to be the first guy to put him out on Saturday. I really, really do. I don't think at this point in Marvin's career. I know Bruno's older. I think Bruno's 32, Marvin's 31. Um, Marvin's just been in there with guys that have cracked him. He's been in too many wars, in my opinion. And I don't think he's going to be able to eat shots like that from Bruno. I think if Bruno catches him one time on the chin, it's going to be really bad. I'm not going to sit here and say that Bruno's going to put him out cold, but if Bruno drops him, maybe Bruno has great ground game as well. I mean, he's very, very well overall, really good all around fighter. So I like Bruno on the feet and on the ground in this fight. And unfortunately for the Vittori fans, he always brings bangers. Much respect to Marvin Vittori, but I think my boy Bruno's going to get him out of the octagon. He's going to finish him for the first time in the UFC.
Yeah, and I'm also probably going to agree with that because I was watching, some Bruno clips, some Marvin clips, obviously before I do videos like this, like to watch a little bit of fights just to see what Sometimes I forget what fighters bring to the table. Marvin obviously has had a lot of great fights. Something a lot of people are talking about, and he also mentioned it during this fight weeks. They were asking questions about it. Marvin is on this, losing skid. I think it's a 3-fight losing skid. This fight's really important for him because if he loses, his future with the UFC could be in shambles because 4 losing streak does not look good on your record, especially when you're down with Dana White. He'll just cut you. He doesn't care if you're ranked or not. But speaking about the fight specifically, I do agree with you. I really like Bruno's groundwork. I think if this fight can go to the ground, if Bruno can get Marvin down on the ground, I think it will be over there. But like you said, I've been kind of waiting for, like you said, Vittori's been in a lot of fights. A lot of people have hit him. His chin's kind of held up. I think if he takes those shots from Bruno, though, I really don't think his chin will hold up. So I probably going to be very bold here and say, just because of all the circumstances, I think Bruno is going to get a round 3 KO finish. I think that's what I'm going to go with. And I think I'm going to stick with my gut and stick with Bruno to start our prediction video. And obviously, moving down the line, when you talk about the female side of things, I think this is the first fight on the actual official prelims. Is obviously Macy Barber versus Karen Silva. Karen Silva just picked up a split decision win over Diona Barbosa, friend of the podcast. We love her on this channel. Macy Barber, obviously, she was on a tear, complete tear before that fight with Aaron, where she had the health concerns going on, the seizures, so she didn't end up competing that night. So we have not seen Macy Barber in a long time now, but I think she's going to keep this hot streak going against Karen. Obviously, Macy does have a lot of decision wins. I think this is another one that will probably go to decision, with Karen also being in some battles as well. Karen's last fight was, a complete battle. Very good fight. I just don't think her striking's going to hold up with Macy's. And I think I'm going to go Macy Barber, not really overthink this one, and go Macy Barber by unanimous decision. And that's how I'm going to roll. How about you, Max?
Yeah, I think I'm on the same train here, guys. Me and Owen think a lot alike. I think that's why we're on this podcast together. I'm not really going to overthink it either. I got Macy 29-28 though. I think it is going to be a unanimous decision as well. I think Silva could probably get one round off her, but I think you guys are going to see a fire lit under Macy's ass on Saturday night. She's had to deal with so much adversity over the last few months. So many people talking shit. I mean, I follow Macy on Instagram. I look at comment sections and people say some really messed up stuff, man. Um, especially for her to be in a main event, that's kind of unheard of nowadays in the UFC. To have a women's main event, it shows how much they respect Macy and Erin Blanchfield. Obviously, Erin just had an amazing performance against Cortez at UFC 322. But you can't mess with health at the end of the day. Like God's number one in life. Family's right there underneath God, but then your health is right there too. So you got to make sure you got good health in life. And if you're having seizures right before you're about to walk out, you obviously can't fight. So I think Macy has been a just absolute dog leading up to this fight. I think she's going to bring out, the best of what she's got.
See if that's running. All right, perfect. So moving down the line of the prelims is a matchup that me and Max are excited for. Obviously, like Max mentioned, he hung out with Terrence McKinney not too long ago. Make sure to watch. He has tons of. I think he has. How much vlogs do you have? Three, I think, over on your channel. He has three vlogs over on his channel. Very good content that he filmed with Terrence and the squad down in Florida. Make sure to check that out. But as far as this fight goes, obviously Terrence McKinney's walking in there, lots of finishes, specifically quick finishes, lots of round one KOs, finishes, submissions. He's stepping in there, obviously, as an underdog, and rightfully so, just because Chris Duncan is a threat on the ground, has a lot of submission finishes. If you're talking to me, I'm a huge Terrence McKinney guy. He's also a friend of my podcast. He was on not too long ago, so I'm always going to stand by my friends. I think his power, Terrence has a lot of power. I think it's going to give Chris a lot of issues. Um, I think if Chris overextends on his takedowns, I think it's going to be a perfect opportunity for Terrence to land the shot he needs to put Chris out. Um, Only thing Terrence has to watch out for is his chin. Obviously, Chris Duncan can throw jabs at you, he can throw shots at you. Terrence just has to watch that, watch his chin, make sure not to take anything too brutal. But I always back my guys, and I think I'm gonna go. Don't think it's gonna be. I think this is gonna be a war for Terrence. I think he needs a fight like this. Not that I'm saying that he hasn't, had tough fights, but I think this is a perfect fight that prepares himself because he's been looking to get into the top 15. I think this is a good fight to kind of start his track to the top 15 in lightweight, but rightfully so. Prediction wise, I'm going to go Terrence McKinney by knockout. I'm not going to do round on this. I'm just going to have faith and say he gets a KO in one of the three rounds that we see him compete in, but I'll move to Max for his prediction.
Let's go. Well, first of all, I gotta show the shirt right now. You guys already know how we're coming right here. We got the T Rex shirt on. Yes, sir. Had to flex that. Had to bring it on here. Um, there's a few things I just want to say. First off, you never know who's going to come on your podcast. So like, if Chris Duncan ever comes across this or this gets put out there, all credit to him. I respect the hell out of him. He's a fucking warrior, man. And I think it's really disrespectful to Terrence McKinney and Chris Duncan before I start talking about this fight that these guys aren't the featured prelims. There's no way. There's no way
Yeah,
that Torres is a better fight than this. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. So if you're Dana White and you want people to buy the pay-per-view for the last time, this is the fight you want to put at that feature prelim. This is the one that gets the people going before you get to the main card, in my opinion. But that's just me going to school and being a marketing major, I guess. I think Terrence is going to get this done, though. I think he understands how dangerous Chris Duncan is. I think anybody that watches MMA knows how dangerous Chris Duncan is. I think what's going to be interesting to see for Duncan is what game plan is he going to have, because everybody knows that Terrence is going to come out hot. It doesn't matter what Terrence says on camera this week. We all know he's going to come out hot. He does not like to leave, his money, his winning loss record on the line to judges. He does not leave that up to three people to decide if he won or lost a fight. He's going to go out there and he's going to go out on his shield or he's going to win the fight. So it's going to be really interesting to me to see how this first minute of the fight even goes. Is Chris going to try to weather the storm and let Terrence gas out? Or is he going to just try to bring it to Terrence because he knows that if maybe I'm not aggressive early on, he's going to get me before I can get him. So I think that's the biggest factor in this fight. What is Chris Duncan going to do the first 2.5 minutes of this fight? I got Terrence by first round submission, though. Um, I got to also point out, though, Chris does have a decent ground game. He's got a very nasty guillotine, so Terrence has to watch where he's putting his head if he's going to take Chris down as well. So that's got to be something that Terrence is very aware of, and that's something you have to respect as an MMA fan for Chris Duncan on his side. But I think Terrence is going to get him on the ground, man. I think he's going to show levels on the ground. I think he's going to submit him quick. But definitely look for Terrence to throw quick 1-2s down the pipe early. Let Duncan know that he's in for a quick minute on the feet, maybe if he doesn't start throwing stuff back. So I think Terrence is going to set the tone early, get the submission in round one. This thing's not going to see the cards.
Yeah, and transitioning to the fight that we obviously think should have been or is the featured prelim of our event here right before the main card starts. Obviously, Grant Dawson versus Manuel Torres, with Grant Dawson kind of in. I think this was a weird fight when they made it just because Grant Dawson was kind of looking to fight in the top 10 area because he's ranked 13. He was looking to put himself in the top 10. I think he called out I think Chandler was one of the names. Everyone calls out Chandler. Wasn't going to happen. So obviously they're throwing him in there with Manuel Torres, who is, I think he's 16-3. He's a pretty good fighter himself. He's pretty good on the feet and the ground. I think he has finishes on the ground. He has some rare naked choke finishes as well. I'm a huge fan of Grant Dawson, though. I have a lot of podcast friends that I talk to who have had him on their channels. Obviously, he's the huge favorite for this. I think a lot of these I'm going to say I'm not overthinking. I think Grant Dawson's going to get the job done, probably on the feet, and win this by split decision. I think it's going to be close, so 29-28 type of deal there. Because Manuel Torres is, no joke. I do think this is a good fight for Grant. I just kind of wish they maybe gave him an opponent within the top 10 boundary. Obviously, didn't make it happen. If he were to get some type of finish here, I think it would be huge for him because they would take him maybe a little bit more seriously. Not that I'm saying they don't take him seriously, but um, I think getting a statement win would, possibly get him that fight that he wants to mark himself within the top 10 boundary. But I'm going to go Grant Dawson by split decision. Close fight here, but I'm excited for it, and I'll turn it to you, Max.
Yeah, I also got Dawson. I think he's an overall solid guy. I think, from maybe a casual MMA perspective, he doesn't have the most exciting fight style. I think that's why some people are a little mad about him being the featured prelim, but he's the number 13th guy in the, arguably the hardest division in the UFC. I just think Dawson is just going to show levels on the ground once again. I said this about Terrence last fight. I'm actually going to be picking Dawson, ironically, to do well on the ground because he's Chris Duncan's main sparring partner. But I'm going to be choosing Grant Dawson to win this fight. Torres definitely has the power, though, to maybe get Dawson on the feet. I think Dawson's just going to have his way with Torres on the ground, though. Torres is a good prospect, good up-and-coming guy. I just see a 30-27. I think it's going to be an easy win for Grant Dawson. I think we're going to get 15 minutes out of this one. Unanimous decision, clear-cut win.
Yeah, and when we're talking about UFC 323, obviously we've been talking about a lot of good fights already, but a lot of good fights. But we like to talk about the main course here, which we'll get into with the first fight of the card. And just disclaimer, when I'm saying these names, you might, I'm terrible at names. Whenever I have people on for interviews, always have to listen to their intros like 8 times to get their names right. So whenever you hear me kind of botch someone's name, just know, obviously not disrespectful, because I think I saw a chat once or a comment that said I messed up someone's name, and then I'm like, well, when you're doing this like me, you have tons of people on with unfamiliar names, and you just got to go along with it. And another disclaimer, we're doing this couple days out, so these fights that we're talking about, lots of things could change within here and now. We know how the UFC works. People pull out last second. Might be some weight issues that occur. So, like I said, we're excited for this card. Just wanted those disclaimers out before we get into this main card. Here, starting with Jane Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov. And I'm honestly a huge fan of Jan. I know they've been posting clips of him getting some nasty KOs. I love this dude's power. I think he's on a 2-fight losing streak from when his last fight. I think he's on a 2-fight lose streak. Not really sure about Bogdan here. I'm just a huge fan of Jan. Love his power. He's obviously number 5 ranked. Obviously, the last 2 fights he's had were against pretty good people. I think against Olberg and Pereira. Obviously, 2 of the top dudes right now. So going into this fight, I'm expecting it's the first fight of the night. Crowd's gonna be rowdy. I'm hoping Jan just completely gets a nice KO finish here. I think it'd be a nice way to start the night. I think I'm not gonna say much more, but go Jan by KO in the second round there. And Max, I'll let you discuss.
Yeah, oh, and I'm glad you mentioned that he fought, Pereira and Olberg in his last 2 fights. I mean, if you guys watch these fights, like Jan arguably beat both of them. That might be a hot take. If Jan gets a little more active in the third round on Pereira, he arguably wins. He won round 1, and then he arguably wins round 3. I think a lot of people were surprised he beat Olberg beat him whenever he got his hand raised. So there's not a chance in hell I'm going to pick against a guy in Jan Blachowicz who just went toe to toe with 2 of the best guys in the world right now. There's not a chance in hell I'm going to do that. Guskov does have dangerous power. He's a very, very good, rightfully so, ranked the number 11th guy in that division. But once again, I've said this already on the podcast a few times now. Jan is going to show levels. He's been in there with 2 legends his last 2 fights. There's no way in hell he doesn't win this fight. Give me Jan Blachowicz.
Yeah, and when we make our way down the card, there's a guy on this card that, kind of, I don't know if it's really highlighted, but it is one of his last fights. Henry Cejudo will be retiring. He already said it after UFC 323. As you said, with the UFC, lots of things change. We even see, um, lots of fighters return, not even in the MMA scene. Sometimes they return, whether it's boxing, just a lot of different things. But as of right now, it's, the rumor is that Henry is going to be retiring after this fight. He says he wants to spend more time with his family. We'll see what happens with that. But with this fight with Payne Talbot, I honestly, when I'm looking at this fight, I know a lot of people are kind of writing Henry off. I know he's a huge underdog going into this fight, going in there with one of the top, I guess you can say, top prospects right now of that division, and Payne Talbot. If you're asking me, I think Payne Talbot is going to get a finish in that third round, but I think it's going to be a war. I don't think Henry's going to go down without a fight. Obviously, he has a ton of experience, and um, I don't know how the experience is going to work against a guy like Payne Talbot, who is, the fiery guy, flashy guy. He has lost, I think, within his last 2, he has lost. So he had that fire, kind of lost it. And I think this is a huge fight for Payne, just going to win over the guy who's sitting at number 10 right now. And I'm going to go Payne Talbot by, I think he's going to get a third round submission. It is going to be tough to get that because we have seen videos. Henry's defense is pretty decent on the ground. But then again, he hasn't won. I don't think he's won in a while. Might be wrong on that. But like I said, not going to speak too much more. Going to go Payne Talbot by third round submission here, and I'll pass the floor to Max.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. This is the fight that I've been dreading to talk about. I really, to be totally honest, I don't really know what's going to happen in this fight. I'm gonna say something though. I'm gonna let the people in. So if you're on this, if you're watching this right now, you're watching me and Owen's breakdown. I'm gonna give you guys some tea. I'm not gonna tell you where I got this from. I'm gonna let you guys in on some shit. Okay. The UFC's plan. This is part 2 of what the UFC's plan was for a UFC White House fight. They wanted Wellmaker to win his fight at Madison Square Garden. That did not happen. What was supposed to happen? Wellmaker and Talbot at the White House. That is what the UFC wanted to do. I'm revealing that right now. I don't know. I don't think that's something that's out there. I don't think people know that. That's not been leaked. But that was their plan. So the UFC put this fight together for Talbot to win. The problem is Cejudo is the vet he is. He had a great fight against Yadong earlier this year. Unfortunately, it did end because of that eye poke. So many fantastic fights this year. I mean, that's another main event right there that, had some issues because of an eye poke. So I really hope, we get something sorted out, whether that's change of gloves or, we're really going to enforce it. You eye poke once, warning, next one, automatic point. Doesn't matter the severity of it. So I really hope going into 2026 with this huge break that we have coming up that we're going to make some very big changes and some very important changes going into next year because that's something that has to be implemented. Every other sport that you have, it doesn't matter if somebody, oh, I accidentally fouled him in basketball, but that doesn't matter. The guy's still going to go shoot free throws if it was a shooting foul. It's got to be the same way in MMA. Rules are rules. There can't be an in between. Can't matter what refs in there or not in there. It's got to be a straight stand up rule every time. So I hope that happens. But let's get back to the fight here. Um, Damn, man. Ronnie Barcelos just held Talbot down so bad a year ago. I know Talbot came back and beat Diego Lima. Lima's an absolute dog. I respect the hell out of him. And the Cejudo's just so hard to knock out, dude. He's a tough guy. I know he's a little guy. I know there's a big height difference here. I love just based on the odds of me looking at it right now down at the bottom of the screen, dude. I love Cejudo plus 230. I absolutely love it. I think though, when you do hear fighters openly say, they are going to be retiring, as an athlete, you could be 1 foot in, 1 foot out, even if you are putting it out to the public that you're all in. I think it's very hard to be very focused and be hungry and be dangerous if you do have that mindset. So maybe Talbot can capitalize on and knock out Cejudo if he's not all the way there on Saturday night. But that Cejudo at plus 230 is looking mighty fine. I think Cejudo could really give Talbot problems on the ground and have his way with him on the ground, even with the height difference, because obviously Talbot's going to be able to get up a lot easier than maybe other guys Cejudo's fought in the past, especially at flyweight, because height does make a huge difference in being able to get up from a takedown.
Yeah, and kind of moving down the card is, I'd say, probably an important one for specifically, I guess you can say, the flyweight division, low key, or later on, or not too in a couple minutes here. Brain's not functioning too cold over here in Boston, guys. But we'll be talking about the champion of the flyweight division. But when we talk about the contenders, at least we've seen a lot of talk with Tetsuro Taira, who mentioned, I think, earlier at the media day that he says a win over Brandon would put him in the title picture, which Brandon's obviously the number 2 guy right now. Van's the number 1 fighting for the title. So I think it's fair to say if he gets a win over Brandon here, huge win for him and would put him next for whoever claims the flyweight title after Saturday night. But when we talk about this fight specifically, it's kind of, weird because it works two ways. You kind of have one dude who gets a lot of finishes, and then the other guy who has a lot of, wins by judge's decision. Um, when I'm thinking about this fight, and specifically, I'm honestly a huge fan of both these guys. Love Brand. He's been doing sport for a while now. I think he's a pretty interesting dude. He does a lot of live streams. He was actually, I think, streaming recently, like on Tuesday, Monday, or something, before the fight week started. So, longtime vet in Brandon. I do think this is going to be a very close decision, though. Obviously, the lines speak for themselves. Vegas thinks this fight's going to be close. I really don't know how this fight's going to go. Could go either way. Think it's going the whole 3 rounds, though. Just honestly, give me Tatsuro Taira by judge's decision, and we will see him in the title picture soon enough, within hopefully past Saturday, because I'm a huge fan of that guy and would love to see him. I think he's gone a shot against Pantoja and lost, but Pantoja's the flyweight, legend. So pass it to you to talk about this flyweight contender matchup we got.
Yeah, this is another banger. There's not often times you can put two flyweight fights together at the end of the night and everybody be really excited. But this is a really exciting fight for the real UFC fans, the real MMA community. This is an absolute scrap right here. I 100% agree with you, Owen. Oh, sorry, my Apple Watch is talking to me right there. Sorry about that. I 100% agree. I think this is going to go 3 rounds. If it was 5 round fight, maybe I'd say there might be a finish in round 4 or 5. I think both guys are very durable, though. I think both guys are going to have their way. I think this is going to be a really exciting fight on the feet. Give me Tatsuro Taira by split decision, 29-28. I think that's got this written all over it. If I'm a betting man, you guys are tuning into this. If you need some advice for picks, definitely bet the over 2.5 rounds on this one. I think this goes the distance. Should be a very competitive fight. Both guys are at the top of the flyweight division for a reason. Moreno's been around the flyweight division, been the champ. The dude's an absolute dog, but I think it's going to be big for Taira to get a title shot. I think the UFC would absolutely love that, to have a guy from Japan be able to step in that role and compete for a title. So give me Tatsuro Taira.
Yeah, and when we talk about the contenders, obviously you have to talk about who's going to be champion after Saturday night of the same card. So, with no further ado, the first headliner is Alexander Pantoja versus Joshua Van. Obviously, Joshua Van coming off of that huge, fight, probably fight of the year, actually.
Yeah.
And, you've seen it on Instagram. You know, Michael Aswell came on this podcast not too long ago, kind of told me about the Joshua Van Pantoja matchup happening. He told me when it was going to happen, where it was going to happen. So, shout out to Michael Aswell. He was also in the UFC Embedded, one of the episodes. Huge fan of Michael. Love having him on the podcast. He's a friend of the podcast. One of a close friend to Joshua Van as well. So I always stick by my guys, like I've said. So I won't be a fan favorite. I've already seen it in my comment section of Instagram. People hating on my Joshua Van pick, but I am going to go Joshua Van here. I know it's a risky pick because Pantoja, obviously, we've seen him, tear up the division. I think he's on I think after this he'll be on a fifth title defense. I think, if I'm not wrong on that. But going into this fight, I think what's huge for Joshua is obviously the takedowns. We've seen what Joshua Van can do on the feet. A huge thing for him is he's going to have to stuff these takedowns because Pantoja can easily get you to the ground, and once he has you on the ground, he'll finish you pretty quickly. We've seen it in Pantoja's last fights he's had. He just completely tore through his opponents once he gets them to the ground. But important for Van to try and keep this one on the feet because I love Van on the feet. Very entertaining fighter out of Joshua Van. Also, youngest fighter. I think he's actually the first fighter to be a 2000s baby fighting for the title. Find that kind of crazy, actually, just now that I said it. But I think he's sitting at 24 years old, obviously a young kid. Hopefully he gets it done against Pantoja. I'm really going to be bold here and say he gets the finish. I've posted on my Instagram story. I'm not going to say how he gets this finish. I'm just hoping he gets it done. But Max, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, man. I always respect being loyal in sports, and you got to rock with Van for obvious reasons. Shout out to Aswell for being able to put you all with Van right there. Um, Man, if Van goes out and wins on Saturday night, you could really make an argument for him being fighter of the year as well, even if Merab does retain the belt, just because of the year he's had and the run he's been on since he, had that KO loss to Charles Johnson. It's like you said, though, earlier, Van was just so good. And in 320, or I'm sorry, not 327, 317 this summer international fight week against Royval. Like you said, potential fight of the year candidate. It was really good to see Van get tested. He's had his way with a lot of guys in the octagon. Obviously, that's why he's fighting for the title. But, I think that he needed that before going into this fight to really just be in an absolute war, because that's what Pantoja is going to do. He's like kind of like that crazy drunk uncle that's at a bar, and he's just going to like keep walking towards everybody and just causing violence. Um, I unfortunately just don't think it's Joshua Van's time yet, though. He is very young. I do see the belt getting wrapped around his waist. I do not think it's going to be on Saturday night. I think Pantoja is going to get a second round submission by rear naked choke. I think he is going to take Van's back and submit him in the second round. But I'm Team Van. I've got no issues with Alexandre Pantoja. I love Brazilians. They're the nicest people in the world. All love to that dude. But I think it'd be very good for the sport to see Van get that strap around his waist on Saturday night. So, you know, I'm pulling for Van, but my heart's telling me Pantoja. You got two pretty dominant champions on this card, and I think Pantoja's going to retain.
Yeah, and I will, just leave with a, short comment. If, obviously for everyone watching, if Joshua Van ends up, losing this fight, it's obviously he's sitting at 24 years old right now. He would have
Yeah.
nothing to be ashamed of. And he is, a lot of people have said it, he is the future of that entire division. So I do see if he does not, end up winning the belt on Saturday, I do see he will be champion at some point in his career. Sitting at 24 and already having a title shot's an insane accomplishment within itself. Not a lot of people have the opportunity to fight for a championship at the age of 24, but that's what happens when you're, hard working and dedicated. So, like I said, I'll ride with my dude Van, and once again, shout out to Mike Laswell, and hopefully he'll see this clip on Instagram. I'll throw it on there so he'll see my pick on this one. But when you talk about the co-main event, obviously the highlighted fight of the night. Uh, Honestly, not a huge fan of this fight for a lot of different reasons. I just don't see anything changing from their first fight, to be completely honest with you. I know Peter, he is very dangerous on the feet. I just don't think it's going to be enough to stop Merab. Merab's on a complete tear right now of that entire division, kind of just cleaning out guys, but also, kind of cleaning them out again, because he obviously does have a win over Yan already. And I don't see much changing, like I said, unless Yan took like this huge wrestling camp and spent like 2 years over in Dagestan, actually like 20 years, because Marab, he wrestles as well over in Georgia. So unless Yan has somehow snuck over to Georgia or snuck over to Dagestan and took a wrestling, camp, I do see Yan going to the ground. I think it's going to be a complete domination. Actually, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think Marab's going to, win this pretty convincingly and really start cementing himself. He's already, so some would already call him the bantamweight greatest of all time. He's really on track for it, and a win over Yan kind of just, continues this reign of terror in the bantamweight division. So I do not see the title changing at all. I just don't think this fight's going to be that interesting, which is why when it was announced as the main, I know a lot of people were upset about it because I think it's just going to be a complete domination. Like I've said, I think Marab's going to get Yan on the ground a couple times. Do I think he's going to finish him? Absolutely not. I think it's going to be a pretty convincingly judge's decision, like we've seen in the past with Merab fights. And I see Merab, continuing his reign of terror in that division and see what happens, because I know he's been talking about a lot of different things after this fight, possibly moving up. He's probably not going to move up. He'll probably continue terrorizing that division. Nobody can, figure him out. And yeah, he's still going to be our champion into January. And honestly, he's one of my, probably a year ago, when I was talking about Merab, I was talking about him in a negative way because I really was not a huge fan of Merab. But going into January to now, I respect Merab a lot. He's one of the most active champions in the UFC right now. Obviously, his fifth, title defense, which is insane to say in itself when you're a champion. Rare to see that, especially Merab's a little older compared to the other champions who fight once a year, twice a year in Islam, and Hamza is another one that isn't really active. Merab has been active. He will continue to be active after this fight with the championship. But I've been talking a lot. So, Max, who do you think's going to? Do you think it's going to be a title retain or a new champion come this main event?
Yeah, man, it's gonna absolutely be a title retain. I couldn't agree more with what you just said. I think though, besides Umar and Peter, I really just don't think anybody else can fuck with Merab, man. I really don't. I think the only path to victory that Peter Yan has in this fight is, if you guys have noticed, Merab is trying to be a more entertaining fighter. It's like Owen just said. Like, a lot of people hated him. A lot of us like Sugar Sean. I'm a huge O'Malley fan. Next room over, we got a lot of Sugar Sean merch, but I respect Merab. I think he's a lot more entertaining than he was a year ago. The only way Peter wins this fight, though, is if Merab gets too confident with his hands and he starts throwing. You've seen this with the O'Malley fights because O'Malley's had to worry about being taken down, so he's gotten hit with some stuff. You've seen it in his last fight with Corey Sandhagen. So Merab is like starting to throw his hands more in these fights. So if Jan can catch him whenever Merab's maybe a little too lax on the feet, he's really trying to throw his hands and not really, stick to what he's best at. I think that's really Jan's only path to victory. Clipping Merab, he's the machine for a reason, right? Rightfully so. That's his nickname. You're going to have to put his lights out if you're going to beat Merab, but that's not going to happen. I don't know if Merab's going to get a finish or if he's not going to get one, but I see a very dominant performance either way, whether it goes to the cards or, whether he does finish him, some point in the fight. Merab's just going to shoot 50 takedowns on Jan again. I think he shot, a 50 on him the first time they fought. I don't know why you'd switch it up. I know it's not the most fan-friendly thing, especially to a casual fan who doesn't, watch, the sport for what it is. But, yeah, Merab's just the dog, and he's not only going to retain the title on Saturday night, he's going to win Fighter of the Year on Saturday night. He's going to submit that. It's not even going to be close. So, what a year for Merab.
Yeah, and obviously from the time of this recording, like I said, we're a few days out here from UFC 323. Lots of things could change. Hopefully, the card doesn't get impacted too much. But like I said, in the UFC, lots of things can happen between now and Saturday night. Unfortunately, it's how it usually goes in the UFC. But hopefully, a lot of these cards stay so this video is accurate enough. But I'll just pass the floor to Max. If you got anything coming up over on your channel, you can also tell people where they can find you and all that. I'll have your links down below. But do you have anything coming up, or just like where can the people find you?
Yeah, man, I appreciate the opportunity to do that. And make sure you guys follow Owen with Over the Top Talk before I get into my stuff. Owen's put out reels that thousands and thousands of people have viewed it. You guys got to make sure you hit the follow button too. I mean, this guy puts out some badass reels, really puts out funny stuff. He put, I'm just a simple guy. I'm picking Joshua Van. That was the meme of the week so far that I've seen on social media. And it's now Wednesday at the time of this recording. So we've already had 4 days in the week. Best post I've seen so far. It made me laugh. But, make sure you guys follow this channel. Owen's really got it going. Very organized guy, very knowledgeable guy of the sport. So make sure you give my boys at Over the Top Talk a follow. You guys can find me at max.warren on Instagram. I don't have X, unfortunately. That's probably something I need to get into. My YouTube channel is Hawk Sports YouTube, though, obviously. Me and Owen do the same thing. We interview fighters whenever we can. This point of the year, though, I am going to be in New York next week. The week after that, I'm going to be in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And then the week after that, I'm going to be in Florida. So I might not have a whole lot of content coming up, for this month. But in 2026, I'm really going to try to get my ass on the road, shoot a lot of content with these guys whenever they're not in camp. Because I had the time of my life with Terrence McKinney a few weeks ago on the Hawk Talk tour. So I'm going to look to continue that into 2026 and make some big things happen. And hopefully make Owen and Connor Matthews a part of the Hawk Talk tour in 2026 and visit them in Boston. Phenomenal guys. Why would you not want to get on the road to see them? Work kind of holds you back sometimes. You got to work 40 hours in a week. You only get so many days off a year. But, if you love something, you got to go for it. And yeah, we're going to make it happen. Lots of interviews in 2026, a lot of Hawk Talk tours. And I'm really excited to bring that to everybody.
Yeah, for everyone watching, obviously when you're recording in different rooms, you'll see the lights, are off, light switches upstairs. Nothing I can do about that. But, like I said, I'll leave Max's links down below. Like I said, make sure to go check him out. Does very similar content to me. As far as me and Anthony go, obviously, most of my fans are WWE fans. John Cena's got about 10 days left, so lots of content around him will be over on the Instagram at Over the Top Talk. Unfortunately, his time is almost up. Obviously, we'll have the 6 week kind of break from UFC, so we'll see what kind of content I can, mix up. What I will say is, as of tomorrow, I have an in-person interview with Francis Hogan, so that'll also be on the channel. Sunday, I'm having, two interviews back, or not really back to back, but actually, friend of Max as well, Mike Davis will be coming back on the podcast on Sunday, as well as Melissa Croden, who was fighting at the last card of the year for the UFC in December 13th. So those interviews will be up. Tomorrow's an in-person one. Sunday's more of the virtual type of style that I like to do. And like I said, make sure to sub. We're on the road to 200 subs. Me and Anthony have been really grinding, especially over on Instagram. That's like the main page. I'd appreciate you guys following. Over the Top Talk, no spaces. We're kind of killing it over there right now with the monthly views over on Instagram. So I'll link everything below, but we're on the road to UFC 323 and also kind of I guess you can say, a new page of UFC because this is the last card that you will have to pay for, and now it's going to be on Paramount, and lots of content to be made once it comes January. But we're on to UFC 323 and hope you guys enjoyed our prediction video, and we will catch you all in the next one. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
See you guys next time. Let's go, Bruno.